All right, we're recording.
All right, guys, what's up? Nadia is 4 weeks out as of tomorrow. We have a lot to catch you guys up on here. So, again, I hope this series to you, we kind of want to tell the story of prep, and to me, that's so much more of just the X's and O's of her diet. So we're going to go into a lot today because we missed last week on my behalf because of the Chicago Pro. So we have basically three main subjects, topic points that we want to cover. In our last video, we talked about her deload. So I want to talk about within this video the effect of that deload, what she felt coming out of the deload, how it helped her. I also want to really open up and discuss just kind of like environmental variables within a contest prep that can impact the contest prep either for the negative or for the positive, because within our relationship, Nadia and I's relationship, I know that her adherence is 100%. And we still were kind of hitting some speed bumps that really, in my mind, didn't make any sense because before her move, like, everything was flawless. Like, it seemed like everything was working. And then we really didn't change anything through that move other than the fact that things seemed to stop working. So one night, I think it was one night, we actually had a conversation, and we'll kind of go into the details of that conversation. And then from that conversation, how things kind of transpired from there. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is, like, the actual X's and O's changes of where she's at now, why we're pushing, and all that. But I really want to give context, because without the context of where her current diet is, it's not really relevant to anything to you guys. So I think with the context that you can then apply to your own situation, it's going to allow you, because if all I did within this video, if all we talked about was where she was at within her diet, what her numbers look like that's useless to you guys. But I think the context of everything is going to really allow us to open up, and then you guys see the big picture. So let's kind of jump into the deload. What you felt. Let's recap what we did with the deload for those people that might be new, and then what you felt coming out of that deload.
So during that week that we changed our training, throughout the deload week, I wasn't necessarily doing a bunch of feeder sets going into my top sets and then going to failure. It was still, like, I would say the intensity was still there. It wasn't like me just picking up light weight and getting a pump. Like, that wasn't exactly the point, I don't think, and that's not what I went and did. What I did was, rather than going through all of those sets, I warmed up and then I went into a top set that I could maintain for more than like 10, 12 reps. So I would take that top set that's a little bit less than my usual top set and ride that out a little bit longer, take that for more of a ride. And I found that I felt a little bit stronger, like I wasn't pre-exhausting myself earlier with these sets beforehand. I was able to warm up to what I thought was appropriate and then go into that top set then that I was able to get a lot out of. I mean, I thought I had great workouts all week, and then throughout, I think it started, we were working out together, we were doing legs, and my squats just felt heavy, and that's when I called to change that. And so rather than taking 135, 155 for my sets, we backed it down to, I think, like 115 or 125. And then rather than trying to hit 10 to 12 reps, I took it to like 15 or 17 or something like that. So I was just able to go a little bit further, and I still, like I said, had a great week's worth of training, but it wasn't as exhausting on me physically, I don't think. And with all the stress of moving and the things that I will be talking about in the next few minutes, the training I found just was a little bit easier to recover from. It wasn't as much of a mental taxing thing also, and I think that helped then going to the next week with just how fresh I felt, how much more kind of refreshed and kind of clean. Like, the slate was clean, like I had, wiped everything off, and I was ready to just pick up where we left off. And, my strength then going into the next week after my deload was, I thought, a little bit better. Like I said, I felt fresher. I think I had mentioned to you, my leg press was, it felt strong. I used that true squat machine. I love that. I felt strong on there. My presses, like nothing, even though we'll go into this too, the diet, even though we had pushed the diet a little bit, I still felt good in the gym. And I don't think that would have been the case had I tried to keep pushing through that stress and keep, regardless of how I was feeling, how my body was responding, skipping that deload week, I think, wouldn't have been in my favor. I just think that I would have not been able to, there's a time and a place for pushing through it and not pushing through it. And I think that was the time to kind of step off the gas, not necessarily step off the gas, but just reel things back in a bit.
Reevaluate.
Yeah, reevaluate and just take off from there. And I feel in a good spot now. I don't think my training has suffered. Like, I don't feel necessarily weaker. I'm a little bit more tired, but I'm not weaker in the gym, I would say. But I found that it was a great experience, and I think I mentioned this in the last video we did too. It was my first time doing any kind of a deload or reduction in volume, anything like that. So I thought it was extremely beneficial, because the last thing I would want to do is come end of my prep, I look stringy and tired and worn out, because all the times that my body was stressed out and tired, I kept pushing through, and it wasn't productive towards my fat loss goals, my goals on stage, etc.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So just to give you guys like a little context, there's a few things that she said that I want to point out. But first and foremost, those of you listening to this and wanting that practical application of, okay, well, Nadia deloaded in it and it really benefited her. The thing that you guys have to understand is that she gives 110% effort in everything that she does. So when I'm assessing changes that need to be made to her plan, like, I need to kind of view things through the scope of, okay, maybe we need to pull back. So those of you guys watching, like, you have to be real with yourself. If you're not giving 100% effort in your sets, if you're not finishing sets at failure, a deload is not going to be the option that you need to go with, because ultimately you have to be reaching those failure set points to then need to pull back. Okay, so that's first and foremost. Second thing is what I've noticed so much within contest preps is you have to be able to keep the load in terms of your weight on the bar. You have to be able to keep that as stable as possible. But there's going to be times where you need to pull back in terms of volume and volume consideration. So the two things, and this is kind of like a coaching point to Nadia that I want to make while we're on here, and then also for you guys as well. What I noticed within that deload week that I wanted to bring up to her was the fact that we needed to keep load on the bar and we need to keep effort high. But the way to recover within those two things being stable is to pull back on the volume. The other thing that she's mentioned, and she mentioned this to me via text, and then she just said it again here, was that she felt more fresh going into her top sets because she was reducing the amount of feeder sets. So at this point in her prep, and this is kind of the coaching point that I'm making here, like, I want her to keep that same mindset of really navigating the feeder sets in terms of what's needed versus what's not, realizing that the top end sets are what's going to keep her physique. And then really everything else outside of that is just more so just accumulating fatigue, and it doesn't really matter, you know. So what I've noticed is when you start to see a prep go south in terms of a physique getting worse, typically loads are reducing greatly. So you're not putting your body under the demand that it needs to continue to be able to respond. So it's going to lose the muscle because you're not in a caloric surplus. So your body's looking for energy reserve. And if you're not demanding that muscle to work under load to the same extent, it's going to pull from that energy reserve that's now muscle. All right. So you have to keep the loading high, but then everything else from that point forward just needs to be navigated through the volume component, which is what we've done. So now that she's feeling fresh, we just need to kind of take that feedback that she got from the deload, still really monitor the feeder sets going into her top set. And the goal of those feeder sets for her now, the rest of prep, are essentially just not to get injured. Okay, so she's just trying to acclimate her body to not get injured, to get up to the top set as efficiently and as effective as possible to be able to do the most work there. So that's kind of the two biggest things that I wanted to kind of point out. And then the other thing, like in terms of freshness, in terms of just making sure her body's at her best, like I could talk about her a lot because I'm so excited about the muscularity changes that we've made. I mean, was it yesterday you sent me the comparison shot?
Yeah.
So I mean, she's added, I would say, like another 1.5 to 2 inches to where her glutes were at her previous show to where they're at now, you know, in terms of like lower hamstring. I don't want to say glute hamstring tie-in because that's not a real thing, but they just drop lower on her leg. So, you know, all these things, like when we're navigating all this, like I want to make sure all that stays. You know, if the rest of this prep, if we start to regress in terms of her training, then there's a potential that we're going to lose that. And then my job, I didn't fulfill my end of my job. So that's a really important factor. The next important factor that I want to talk about is kind of like those environmental factors that we touched on. We've touched on them a lot because it's been a big issue that we've needed to navigate within her prep because, again, like the adherence isn't an issue. So basically we talked about her cycle, and then we talked about her move and how those two things stressed her, not in terms of like, oh, I'm stressed, but like we could just physically see it on her body. And then after all that cleared, it was like she still wasn't making progress. And that was when we had a conversation one night, and I'm like, hey, like, are things really okay? Like, are you okay at home? Are things okay? And then she mentioned to me that, you know, well, this has been kind of like a, I don't want to say traumatic, but I don't know the other words to use. Like,
yeah, kind of just the whole move was.
Go ahead. Yeah, just you take it over.
Okay, so moving throughout my childhood wasn't ever something that it was something we were excited about or looking forward to. It wasn't like, oh, we're going here because we're starting this exciting new life, whatever. It was always to get away from some kind of trauma or some incident in my family or divorce or just toxic people. And while this moving opportunity for Eddie and I was something we were excited about and something that I was looking forward to, just having to move again was, it just stirred up a lot from my past that it made me very, very kind of frantic and made me very anxious and made me worried because all those things I didn't think I would still be so affected by. And when they just kind of came back into my head, it wasn't very pleasant. It wasn't, it was very hard to be present in the moment when I'm flooded with all these thoughts from the past and how I felt and what, you know, I wish I would have done differently then or where I could have been to prevent something from happening, like just different things and scenarios where I was in my head and not in the present moment because I was telling Matt, nothing right now is necessarily wrong. It's me being in my head, being worried about the past that's, you know, already done for and done with, and there's nothing I can do about it, and I just have to take life for what it is now, which is great. And then me putting like imaginary scenarios in my head about the future or just getting anxious and worked up for no other reason than being in my head about it. And I've just kind of taken a step back and been able to evaluate, okay, so the reason why I'm anxious isn't because everything in front of me and that's going on right now is wrong or is messed up or there's something off in my life right now, because there's not. It was all just, like I had mentioned, just anxiety surrounding trauma that had happened from the past. And I'm not saying that it's not valid for me to have those feelings and that I shouldn't have had those feelings, but I underestimated how much they would affect me through this move and having come back up and being reminded of these memories basically from my childhood, which I had an amazing childhood, but I love my parents and everything, but I've been through a lot, and all of it just kind of resurfaced through this move and through my dad leaving. He's my dad's originally from Poland, and all of his family is from Poland, and he's moving back there the beginning of November. And I knew about this a few months back, and you know, we'd always done things together on the weekends. Once I had moved down, we had spent time with each other, and we'd been close, especially after I moved out. We have, you know, maintained a very strong relationship, and my dad would do anything for me. He's an amazing, amazing father. But I kind of downplayed again how much I thought that how hard this was going to hit me, and what it's like thinking about what it's like without him here. And knowing he's not going to be at Nationals, and wishing that he was, and thinking like when I had initially wanted to do a show this year that he was going to be there for it. But it's just hard, and especially in this move, I don't think I mentioned this, but we had moved into my father's house, the house that I had grew up in with him, and he's actually staying with us until he leaves that first week in November. So I am spending that time with him now. I am hanging out with him now. We're all roomies, and it's a lot of fun. But it's just harder to think about, you know, living with him now again, and how nice that is. To like, what I'm absolutely dreading is taking him to the airport on Sunday, November 8th, and driving in the car alone on the way home. And
I can take over. You're good. Okay, so from my perspective, I just want to give you guys like my perspective on this because, again, I want this to be something you guys can take from. So I'm looking at Nadia, and I'm seeing that everything execution-wise is there. I know that the plan was working. The plan had a stall, and then like after I felt like the things that were stalling it ended, there was still a stall. So that was when I had this conversation with her, and that's why for me, coaching it has to be relational. Not especially, but like when you got people that are on the cusp of accomplishing a big goal or going from, the national stage to potentially a pro stage, like you have to be in tune with all the variables and not just her diet. Because if I was just looking at her diet, if I was just looking at her cardio, I would have missed this. I would have missed that there was more going on within who Nadia is that needed to be addressed. So it's not like I did something. I just kind of asked her. I'm like, hey, like, what's wrong or something going on? And then she kind of brought all this to me, which then makes me, one, aware of where she's at emotionally. And then two, I think it really just helped her out that she could open up, not only to me, but I think you said that you also talked maybe to Dom or somebody.
Yeah, I talked to Dom and Sammy and Cam at work because this stress was also affecting me at work. And, that's not something I'm proud of. I'm good at my job, and it was affecting me there. So they had reached out to me and been like, hey, is everything okay? Like, what's going on? I know you're busy, but what else is it? Because you're off. And right. I think that my friend described me as a shaken up soda can. So I will keep all these things to myself because I don't want to go to Matt thinking, he's my therapist, because that's not the foundation of our relationship. But it is important that he knows these things because, had I not told you these things, who knows how much dirt I'd be eating now.
Right.
And then just realizing, okay, well, it's safe to tell these people how I feel because they genuinely care and they want to see me do nothing but thrive and prosper and be happy. Getting that out and, taking the lid off my shaken up soda can just kind of let everything out. And now I've kind of settled. I've been feeling really, really good the past week and a half, 2 weeks. I was worried, like I told you this morning in our check-ins, that we'd be playing catch up for a little while because of how I felt that I was spinning my wheels backwards during those 2 weeks of being stressed out and being inflamed and just not progressing forward as we were. But I think we're in a good spot now, and telling you all those things wasn't me it's something for athletes to take into account and take into consideration that it's okay to have these feelings, and it's only appropriate that you communicate them to your coach, because in my instance, it was affecting me physically, and Matt needs to know these things, and he does care. So he's not just going to brush it off and say, you should really not talk to me about this because I'm your coach. That's not the situation whatsoever. And it's very comforting, and it's very important to me that he values not only the athlete that I am, but the person that I am, and understands that, the way I function comes from not just a diet and training regimen. It comes from the environment that I'm in and the feelings that I have and the mindset that I have, because there's plenty of times where I could have thrown in the towel because I was feeling weak mentally, or I was feeling down, or I was upset or stressed. Those things just aren't a valid reason for you to neglect or push aside your goals. So Matt, thank you for listening.
Yeah, of course. And then the other aspect of this that I want to touch on is, I think one of my jobs is, it's not to make my athletes confident, but it's to re-instill confidence within them. Because ultimately, you have to be a confident individual, or it really doesn't matter what I say. But when I know that things are shaken, or when I know that the environment might be a little off, that's when it's my job to really step in and instill confidence. And I don't like to be a hand holder, but at the same time, I know when my role is to come in and just uplift somebody. Mm-hmm. So that's when I want to kind of transition into the diet changes that I made why I made them, when I made them. And again, like the mental aspect of the diet changes. So I really held off during this whole period of her body being stagnant from making a lot of changes, because I knew that stress was present. And then I knew when we had that conversation that more stress was present. So within that environment of more stress being present, I didn't want to then be another stressor and be like, okay, like we got to push like right now because you're behind. Because I felt like within the prep confines itself, there was still confidence. And her confidence outside of prep was already shaken. And then if I shook the confidence within prep, that could have derailed her even further. So what we basically did is we rode this out. And guys, it's been like 2.5 weeks, and I've had a crazy 2.5 weeks, so I don't remember the exact dates of everything. But we rode it out until her body started making progress again. And then once her body started making progress, and I could tell that like we were really starting to just get over and you know, overcome what she had gone through, that's when I then made changes, because I knew that she was then going to be on board and it wasn't going to like shake her confidence. And you know, and that was kind of my thought process. And I do that a lot, you know, like another example of that I can give you guys is like when I train with an athlete for the first time, or when I see an athlete doing cardio for the first time in person, that's not the time for me to like, you know, just kind of rip them to the rails in terms of you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, you're not doing cardio hard enough. Because if that's what they've been doing this whole time, then I need to kind of assess things and then slowly transition them into what I want it to look like. If I just slam them right away, it would really make them question everything they had done the entire time. And granted, even though it's not at my level of expectation, it might still be working. Okay, so I don't need to just kind of disrupt the cart, for lack of a better word. So again, with her, I wanted to get through that period, and then I wanted to push, because one thing that I've been talking about this whole time is that I wanted her to be ahead. And we lost the 3 weeks of, she was ahead, and then we lost 3 weeks, so then I felt like we were right on track. And then once her confidence was back reinstilled in terms of all environmental factors, then I wanted to push again to get her ahead again. And that's what we did, and it's worked very, very well. The other thing that I want to talk about really quick too, that I don't remember, it was last week when you refed the first day, you were up like 10 pounds at night.
Yeah.
And it did clear. So it did clear overnight, but like I was like, oh goodness, like we're still not out of the woods yet, because that was not normal for her. To jump like that and weight. So
10 pounds in a day.
yeah, 10 pounds in a day. So I kind of just had to ride it out for a bit, you know, and that's part of prep. But now she's at 100. I think I've mentioned this on previous episodes, but she's at 129 pounds now, give or take, you know, a couple ounces. I've had in my head this whole time 126 without any changes, and I mean she's there. I mean 126, we could get there by Saturday of next week if we needed to.
Like 127 come into the week.
Yeah.
Like when I'm checking in next week as we ride out this base days through the weekend, I mean, I feel it that it's just working.
So let's kind of, I want to get into the nitty gritty of like, let's just go through your diet, let's go through your cardio, because I want people to realize that at points like this is going to be hard. This is going to be very hard. But also your mindset is so good. Like one of the things when I made these changes, which I knew were going to be hard changes on her body, she was like, I'm pumped. Like, this is what I live for, you know, and those that's the champion mindset. When things get hard, like you rise up and you just attack it, you know, and whenever I work with people that really get it, when I put them into those phases of prep where things get really hard, it's like they almost get excited because they know what it's going to take. They know what it's going to take mentally, physically, but they're also like rise up to the level to accomplish what they need to accomplish.
And I think it also helps me like during this transitioning period of my life where I've got these big changes happening. And this kind of goes in combination with the question and answer video that we had done, our favorite and least favorite parts of prep, where I said that my favorite part is the hardest part, which is usually the least favorite part into the stuff, because some people call it. But it also helps me. It's my controllable. It's my one variable that I, you know, at the end of the day, no matter what's going on, I have all 100% control over what I give to this. There's nothing that can sway me or pull me away from it. It's the one thing that I have when my head hits the pillow at night. I can say, despite, all these things that are changing or happening or to come in the future, I gave this hard thing my all, and it's just an empowering feeling, and it makes me feel untouchable at times, like, very strong and very just excited and motivated for the next thing. Because if you could push through that hard thing, what's the next hard thing you can push through? And I think I told you, I said, you tell me and I'm on it. So that's just my mindset, is whatever it takes to get there is how I'm going to get there. There's no path around it. There's no see how much I can get away with. There's no second guessing the plan. There is no plan but the plan, and I intend on just following it to the T all the way through to get done what has to get done. But October 15th is when we made those changes. So that today's the 22nd. So that was about 7 days ago, a week ago.
Right.
So let's see, cardio in the morning, fasted cardio is still at 55 minutes fasted in the morning. I'm on the treadmill most of the time. I've kept my incline and my speed the same throughout. That's a constant that we haven't changed much at all. And I like that a lot, again, because it's just easy to recover from. It's not something that takes everything out of me, so I'm tanked the rest of the day as if I were doing 55 minutes of intervals in the morning, because I've done that before, and it would leave me the rest of the day feeling like, oh my God, I have to work out also. And I think it helps too mentally, being able to complete your cardio and go into a training session knowing that you still have gas in the tank to give. So that's a huge mental advantage too, because I know sometimes it's hard when I'm going, or in the past when I would go into a training session, or I would be completing a cardio session knowing I have to train later, knowing I'm not going to have a good training session because I have such hard taxing cardio. But anyways, on to the other changes. So we're still doing 20 minutes of intervals post-training on the stairs, and that is now being followed by 20 minutes of steady state on the recumbent bike. So my heart rates usually, or beats per minute are about usually like 80, 85, and I keep that pretty constant. I'm at like a level 7 or 8 resistance, and it's hard. I was telling Matt that with these diet changes that you'll hear about in a second, I have like a pit in my stomach at the end of my training and at the end of my cardio, and I feel almost sick. But I also said to him, I said, it makes me excited because I know it's working, and I know that that's only going to lead to a better check-in the next day and a better physique to display on stage. So those hard moments, like, certain people definitely understand that it gets your adrenaline pumping, it gets you excited. It's not something that we hate. It's not a process we hate. Like, even through every hard moment of this, I enjoy it all. It's very easy for me to enjoy this because I just thrive from doing hard things. And a lot of bodybuilders and competitors feel the same, I'm sure. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
We mentioned that we increased my thyroid medication. I started taking taurine because I was having those muscle cramps.
Right.
Let's see. That I just... Amazon, easy, $12. And then, so going into the diet, my pre-training meal is the same amount of carbohydrates, protein, no fats in that meal. It's just the potatoes with the chicken. And then throughout the rest of the day, that's where it starts to change. So my first meal, we removed my 40 grams of oats that I was having, and now I'm having, rather than a carb source, I'm having a fat source with that meal. I'm having the macadamia nut oil, which is amazing. So I'm having my chicken, my kimchi, my spinach and peppers, and that little bit of macadamia nut oil, 7 grams of that. My second meal is also the same. I'm also having, when I can, more of white fish than chicken, just because in my head I want to get better about eating fish, and I also just think, well, if I would be a little bit better had I had something with a different amino acid profile that digested a little bit better, then I'd rather choose the option that's going to make me better. So I'm enjoying that. That second meal has fats as well. Then my third meal, rather than having the 70 grams of rice that we were doing, now I'm having 7 grams of olive oil. I found almond oil in my pantry. Is that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, just curious. I was like, I found this, maybe I can have it. My fourth meal, which is ultimately my last meal at the end of the day, is just white fish and spinach. So the only thing that remained the same was my pre-workout meal and my post-workout meal. Everything else is just protein, veggie, and fat sources with 3 out of those 4 meals. So I'll usually have meals 1 through 3, and then my pre-workout, my post-workout, and then my 6th meal is the one I have before I go to bed. That's the fish and the protein veggie meal. And my high day is still the same. We fed me on, it was Tuesday, and then half a high day yesterday.
Right.
And let's see. Yeah, all of that is the same. I definitely feel like all these changes at once have made a difference already. Like I can tell by the day I'm changing. I think that having, like, the fact that we didn't just change one variable, we went ahead and kind of just attacked this, and we addressed cardio, we addressed diet, and my training is back at its normal capacity. And I think that those changes altogether are going to sum to a very rapid rate of fat loss for me, especially with this very refreshed mindset that I have and good attitude that I have, being ready to take it all on and excited for what it's going to bring me. I feel like I think about checking in next week, and I'm so excited because I know that I'm going to look so much different than I do today.
Yeah.
Just being excited about it, I think, is just something that, of course, in my favor, because if I was like, oh my God, I'm not eating anything, this sucks, I feel like I don't have energy to train, and then in your head, you're not going to have a good training session, so you already kind of go in there and half-ass it. Like, no, you have to be presented with a plan and look at it as a way of, this is the thing that's going to take me to the next level, and it's up to you to get there. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited for these changes, and yeah, I'm hungry and I'm tired, but like, is it worth whining about? No, because that has nothing to do with, when you're being judged on stage, no one cares about your schedule or how hard your prep was. That's not what you're being judged on. At the end of the day, you want to present what you need to present to win, and that's what we're doing here. And I'm not the person who can eat hundreds and hundreds of carbs before they go into a show, and I'm not the person who can get away with like a little bit of cardio and a burger and fries every weekend. Like, that's not prep for me. And I thrive and I take pride in that I'm able to do this hard stuff and handle it so well mentally and still enjoy my life. It's not like my life sucks when I'm on prep because I'm dieting and I'm on low food and high cardio. Because if I were to tell someone, they'd feel bad for me about what I'm eating and how much cardio I'm doing. And it's like, no, it's, nothing to be sorry about. I love it.
Yeah.
Realistically, like on the days where I complete my both sessions, because I have 5 fasted sessions, or I'm sorry, 6 fasted sessions and then 5 post-workout sessions. On the days where I complete both of them back to back, plus my training, and on my base day, I'm not eating that many calories and I'm doing 95 minutes of cardio. So when people hear that, and that's why I usually don't talk about it, is because I don't want that pity and that kind of like sympathy, like, oh my gosh, you must be so tired and hungry, I'm so sorry. I don't want that. Like,
yeah. But I think that's why I wanted you to talk about it, because it's like there's this concept now that prep should be easy, or if it's not easy, you're doing it wrong, or versus like when I started, and I'm not even that old, like it was all about, how hard can you work, and and I'm not going to say suffering because we're choosing to do this, but like literally like, just seeing how much you could get out of your body. Mm-hmm. And then over time, somehow that concept has changed into seeing, how little you can get away with. But I mean, this is real, this is what it takes. And then the other end of the spectrum, like from a coaching aspect, you can always pull back, but you can't get to that peak week. You can't get to those 3 days out. And if they're not there, then they're not there. So this is the time where you push, you get everything in, you make sure that, for Nadia, it's like, You make sure her hamstrings are in, you make sure that her lower stomach is in, and then she's good. But if I keep just like waiting and waiting and waiting, then it's going to get to like this period where I'm going to be adding stress to her because we didn't do what we needed to do early enough. That way the final result would be where it needs to be. So this to me is all a part of the process. I think where coaches and athletes kind of miss the mark is, guys, there's nothing wrong with really digging deep. There's nothing wrong with working hard. It's just within that, like, there has to be communication. And you can't just be left in the dark, because that's when things start to go wrong. So just because your coach sends you a plan that on paper might be low calories or might be hard, that is 100% okay. But then within that, just make sure you're communicating with them, making sure that they actually are aware of how you're feeling, what's going on, things of that nature. But work, like you only get one shot. You only get one prejudging, and then it's done. And if you don't do what you needed to do leading up to those final moments, you're going to regret it once you get off stage. So just do the work. Don't be food focused. Don't be worried about, another thing too, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with knowing what your macros are, but if you obsess over your numbers are and like go into a cardio session being like, or a training session being like, I've only had 30 grams of carbs today, like you're never going to be your best in that thought process.
Yeah.
If you're always calculating and putting the energy calculation into, how much you can give, then you're never going to be your best.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And I think another thing that I just thought of is, I was thinking, like, seeing where my food is at now and where my cardio is at now. We had addressed this a few episodes ago, talking about just taking time off and feeding up and making sure to have those frequent feedings. But it makes me excited, that much more excited for my improvement season, to get my metabolism to a place where maybe we won't have to get this low again or this high of cardio again, and just being able to, whether we're making improvements in my prep, whether we're making improvements in my off season, they're all going to kind of compound and build off of one another, so that every contest prep we have going forward is only going to be more progressive and better, from a sense of getting healthy again in my off season and eating more and being able to metabolically get to a point where things don't have to be pushed this hard. It makes me realize, how glad I am to be in the position I am in now, to where now I'm looking forward to that time away from the stage. Not to say I'm not enjoying prep, but like, I'm excited for all steps of this.
Yeah.
And I think, because I mentioned to you, listening to Ivana's podcast that you guys did on our culture, and you guys had spoke about building up her metabolism in her off season, and the fact that she's eating more now during her prep than she ever was in the past. It's not just like I'm a sad case who can't eat. Like, it happens to a lot of people where they just prep after prep, it gets lower and lower, and cardio gets higher and higher, and things just get hard. And I'm excited because now I realize how important this next off season is going to be for me, and how crucial it is going to be for me going forward into contest preps, hopefully as a professional, and being able to go into those preps for my pro shows, knowing that we can bring a refreshed, full, not stringy look, just because I'm going to be that much better metabolically and physically and with food and with cardio. And I mean, I'm just looking forward to all the opportunities that I have to improve and the rest of this prep for my off season, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then too, something else too. Just being realistic, like, that's the goal. And that's obviously what, I've spoken to you about since day one, but at the same time, like, that might just not be you, but I think the thing is with you is, like, that's okay. Like somebody I know, like Jose Raymond, like, he always had to do 2 hours of cardio. It didn't matter what he did. It didn't matter what kind of shape he was in. Like, that final bit, like, he just had to push. Mm-hmm. So like, we're definitely going to work on, getting food up and getting cardio down, and slowly staying leaner in your off season, which you don't get unlean anyway, but you know what I mean? Just like overall. But then at the end, this is, like, I think this is a very crucial point. Like, at the end, like, you got to do what you got to do. And if you don't, you're going to have regrets about it. And that's something that we're not going to have, so we're doing what we need to do now, and then we can ease off during the final week, and then you'll be good.
Yeah. And it's not, I don't want to boast about how much I'm doing and how, little food I'm having, thinking I'm better than anyone because I work harder. That's not the point at all. It's just to simply expose that this gets hard and it gets to be a lot, and it's okay to, you know, be hungry and exhausted and do, like you said, what you have to do, what's necessary. I'm not someone who has, like I said, just a glamorous prep where it's just something I can coast through and that's something that's easy. I'm not just a push button client whatsoever. It's
Right.
as much environmental and mental for me, as you guys obviously understand now, as it is from the perspective of following the plan, because all those things, they are just woven in each other, especially for me, and for the ability to be where I don't have any knots in that woven connection of all those variables. I need to just be mentally clear, environmentally in a good place with good people who care about me. I need to physically be doing what I need to do, and I just have to have the attitude that I can take it on and I can handle it and I can get through it. And that's the place where I'm at now, is I'm confident and I'm not second guessing myself. I'm not worried about going backwards. I'm just happy and I'm grateful for where I am now and through all the things that have made me so tough to be able to handle this. And I'm really excited. I cannot wait.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Next week, I for sure want to get you posing next week for them, so that way they can see where you're at for like your 3 week out update.
Yeah, once this tummy and lower back kind of gets off of me,
It's there. You're good. All right, guys. So this is 4 weeks out. Please, again, if you have questions, just ask in the comments, and we'll be sure to address them either just within the comments themselves or we'll do a video on them. We want to make this just something that you guys can really apply and get a greater understanding of just, you know, contest preps in general. So please ask, and we will be back next week.
6.5 to 4 weeks out from NPC Nationals. That's a wrap. See you guys next time.